Have you ever heard the saying? It's a pretty common saying. Uh, you never know what someone else is going through, right? We say that all the time. You never really know what someone else is going through. It's true. It's true. I had a friend I was talking to earlier this week, not somebody from this church, somebody I know from doesn't live in Harlingen, and they were just really kind of not excited about Christmas, kind of down and not feeling the holiday spirit. And I love Christmas. I tend to get really kind of excited for this season, and I thought, man, what a Grinch, right? What a like Scrooge. And so we were talking. I kind of, I thought I was being like really polite about it, but I probably wasn't as polite as in my head I was thinking, like, what's your problem, man? It's Christmas. Like, come on. Where's the joy? Where's the excitement? And he shared with me how this year was really hard for him because there's a big rift in his family, and he has a child that is not speaking to him and won't be with them for Christmas. And so this is a Christmas where his family, for the first time, won't be all together. Okay. I felt differently. Then instead of saying, hey, why are you being such a Grinch? I was talking to myself, man, why was I being such a jerk? This poor guy struggling with this heartbreak, right? But I didn't know that. And it's often the case, so many of us carry things that most of the world doesn't know what we're going through, and we don't know what most other people are going through. That was the case with Mary. We tend to think of Mary as in the story as just, brave and courageous. She said yes to God's call to her, this big ask that God had for her. And she said, yes, be it done to me according to your will, Lord. But like all that came with that, right? All that came with that, the worries, the anxieties, what would people think of her? She's still a teenage girl. She's worried about how people in her town might view her. I mean, Nazareth at the time of Jesus and Mary, 1,500 people. It's a small town. Everybody knows everybody's business, right? What would the town think? And what would her family think? I used to read this story and say with maybe a little more, a little less sensitivity, the angel Gabriel called Mary, and when God calls us to do hard things, or when God calls us in our life, he doesn't have to tell everyone else what's going on. And he didn't. But I really, as I get older and have a child of my own, wish Gabriel would have sat down with Mary's parents, explained the situation to them a little bit, her siblings maybe. Ideally, he could have done it in front of the entire town so that she wouldn't have had to kind of live with the questions. And I think we take for granted just the weight of what is this calling means to be the mother of Jesus to this young, engaged girl from a small town who's trying to figure out what the rest of her life is going to look like. And who can she talk to about it? Who can she talk to about it that's going to believe her, that's going to know what happened and believe her? And so God gives her one person that she can share with, and it's her cousin Elizabeth. And that's what our gospel reading is. Mary, the first thing she does when she hears that she's going to be pregnant with the Son of God, she goes to her cousin Elizabeth, because Gabriel tells her, this is the person who you can check with. Your cousin Elizabeth, who lives in the hill country. It was a several-day journey, who lives in the hill country of Judea. She is pregnant too. Now, Elizabeth was older. She was considered to be too old to have children in their time. So you figure Mary's probably 16, 17. Elizabeth's probably early 40s, 44, 45, somewhere in that area. And she's pregnant too. She's the one that'll know what's going on. So Mary goes to Elizabeth, and Mary goes to Elizabeth as much for her as for anyone else, because if Elizabeth is pregnant and Elizabeth knows, that's kind of confirmation that Mary wasn't hallucinating, that Mary wasn't having just a dream or a vision. And she goes to Elizabeth, and Elizabeth greets her with joy. all the fear and the worry for that moment disappear from Mary, and she's full of joy. These two women are the recipients of God's promise, and they have each other. The rest of the world may not understand what's being called of them, but they have each other to share it with. God always gives us someone. And so this is two reflections from this story that I want to share with us as we think about the holidays and Christmas and how we approach this season. And the first one is there's always an Elizabeth to our Mary. There's always someone that God gives us somewhere in our life that we don't have to struggle and carry burdens alone. There's always someone. Now, it might not be in the usual cast of characters. We might think it's our husband or wife, it's our parents, it's our siblings, right? It's a close friends. Might be in that group. Might not be, though. Mary couldn't talk to her parents. She certainly didn't know how to talk to her fiance about this. I doubt her siblings would have understood, and I don't think her friends would have got this situation. And there are times in our life when the usual cast of support that we have, or the support structures that we have, aren't quite going to do it. They're just not going to get this thing that we're going through. But God always gives us somebody. He doesn't ever mean for you to suffer or struggle alone. If we're not seeing it, just might mean that person that our eyes aren't open to them yet. But God always has an Elizabeth for us. Someone who's walked that road, someone who understands the journey, someone who knows what we're going through. And I remember, this is a light example. I remember when Sarah was pregnant with Rosie, we were in Wyoming, and there was a priest in our congregation. He was retired from Long Island, and he had 4 children. And he was in his 70s, and he had retired a few years earlier and retired out to Wyoming. And we became friends, and we would go out and get coffee every other week or so. And he would talk to me about balancing being a priest and being a dad and being a husband and home and church and the things he did that he thought he would commend to me, the things that he did that he regretted and that he felt his children suffered from, that he hoped I wouldn't repeat his mistakes. We shared all those things. It's a very niche group, right, to talk about how to be a priest and a dad at the same time. But for that season, and that relationship continued as Rosie was born and an infant and a newborn and all those things. For that season of life, God gave me him as that Elizabeth person, right? He knew the road. He was one of the few people that just knew the road that we were walking down. Now, you might have a person like that in your life who knows the road when you're struggling with something, marital struggle, financial struggle, health struggle. You may have someone in your life that's that Elizabeth type person. So that's our first reflection, is that God never intends for you to struggle through something alone. There's always an Elizabeth somewhere. It just might not be maybe in the normal group that you look to, but there's an Elizabeth somewhere for you. Then the second thing is, maybe there are times in our life when you and I are meant to be the Elizabeth for someone else. Now, some people might hear that and say, okay, that's for other people to do, not me. Right? Other people who are good at that. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, everyone in here, there may be a time in your life, there will be a time in your life when you are meant to be the Elizabeth for someone else. When there is someone you know that is struggling with something that you have been through and are on the other side of. Whether it might be something health-related. Can't tell you how many people I know that, find out they have cancer and are comforted by people who have had cancer and are on the other side, that reach out to them and talk to them about what it's like, about what the treatments are like, about what the uncertainty is like, about what the feeling is like, because they can speak it in a language that only people that have been through it understand. Right? And there's people who have suffered loss. And I can't tell you how many times people that have suffered loss have appreciated when someone else who suffered loss reaches out to them and talks to them about what they went through, because they can speak about it in a language that only people who have suffered that loss can understand. And those are just two examples. It doesn't have to be something huge like that. Right? It could be anything. When you notice someone in your life that is struggling and going through something that you have gone through and are on the other side of, there is a very good chance God is calling you, stirring you a little bit, nudging you to be an Elizabeth for that person. So as we think about Mary and Elizabeth and their friendship and their relationship and how God gave them each other to get through this kind of unprecedented ask that he put on them, I would think it'd be helpful for us to think in our own lives. If you're the person that's struggling this Christmas, pray that God opens your eyes to your Elizabeth. Somewhere in your life is the person who can help you walk that road. And thank the Lord if you're not, if you're in a place where you're on the other side of some of those struggles right now. Maybe God's asking you to be the Elizabeth for someone else. Maybe you're the person that helps someone walk the road that you've been down. One of those two things is true at any given time. We're either the person struggling, looking for the comfort, or we're someone who's on the other side who God might be asking to help offer comfort to others. As we think about Mary and Elizabeth, that's a great thing for us to remember. Either to be praying for our Elizabeth or to have our eyes open to who we might be being called to be Elizabeth for. In the name of God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.